Now, there are lots of Buddhas. This is the first of the three treasures. There are lots of Buddhas. Buddha becomes eventually a transcendent being, a god, but there is also an historical Buddha, probably born somewhere in northern India or southern Nepal, of the Gautama family, the son of a king of the Shakya clan or the Shakya tribe. And Buddha, the historical Buddha, would eventually be known as Shakyamuni, the sage of the Shakyas. He was given the name Siddhartha, which means somebody who achieves his goal. And he's now thought to have lived in the 5th century BC. But the inexactness of this, some people will still argue for the 6th century, some for the 5th century. The inexactness of the inability to give precise datings, even precise locations for the Buddha's history is worth remarking on, although I'm not yet sure what to make of it. There are key events. Apparently when he was born, or so the story goes, an astrologer said, when you grow up, this child will become either a great king or a great religious figure. And since the father wanted the son to be a king, to be a successor, he made sure that he was not exposed to any of the suffering in the world. Into his late 20s, he had a wife, he had a child, he had lived a life of perfect luxury. He had never seen anything to upset him, disconcert him. But one day, said when he was 29, for the first time, he goes out of the palace and he sees a man aging, an old man, and he learns that people age and eventually die. Then he goes out of the palace again and he sees a sick man and he learns that people suffer. And he goes out of the palace once more and he sees a rotting corpse. At that point, he also sees a mendicant monk, a begging monk, an ascetic, a man who practiced all sorts of forms of self-denial to discipline himself, to wean himself from worldly desires, and to seek salvation in that manner. The Buddha, Siddhartha, decides, the person who will become the Buddha, Siddhartha decides he will follow the way of the ascetic monks, the mendicants, and try to adopt these practices to wean himself from worldly goods, to break totally with his family. And for a number of years, he practices various forms of self-discipline. But he's not entirely happy with them. And one day, sitting under a tree, meditating, he has his great enlightenment. That leads him to the conclusion that there's a middle way between worldly self-indulgence and extreme asceticism and self-denial. And that's the way he decides that he will promote. And he goes out to preach, and he gains followers.